Don't you dare touch him. The words tore from Isla Brooks' throat like a battle cry, her body planted between Officer Brent Hollis and the trembling 12-year-old boy, whose only crime was existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her hands shook not from fear, but from a rage so pure it burned through every careful lesson she'd learned about keeping her head down in this town. Brent's hand hovered over his belt, his face twisted with the kind of authority that had gone unchecked for too long, and in that moment, Isla made a choice that would cost her everything she'd spent 40 years building. Before we dive into what happened next, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. This story gets wilder than you can imagine, and I need you here until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far Isla's story travels, because what she did that morning, it changed more than just one small town. Now let's get into it. The day started like every other day had for the past 3 years, with Isla's father coughing in the back room and the coffee maker sputtering like it was on its last leg. 5:30 in the morning, and Isla was already elbow deep in pie dough, her hands working the mixture with the kind of mechanical precision that came from doing the same thing 1,000 times. The diner smelled like grease and yesterday's hope, and if Isla was being honest with herself, which she tried not to be before sunrise, the place was dying. "You're up early." Isla didn't turn around. She knew her father's shuffle the way he dragged his left foot since the stroke. "Go back to bed, Daddy." "Can't sleep when I hear you worrying that loud." She smiled despite herself, pressing the dough flat with more force than necessary. "I'm not worrying, I'm making pie." Same thing in this family. He settled into the corner booth, the one that used to be reserved for the Monday morning coffee club, before those men decided Isla's prices were too high and her opinions were too loud. That was 6 months ago. Now the booth just collected dust and memories. "Bills came yesterday," he said quietly. "I know. Power company gave us an extension, but I know, Daddy, I'll handle it." The lie sat between them like a third presence. They both knew she couldn't handle it. The diner was barely breaking even, and that was on good days. Most days, Isla spent more time wiping down empty tables than serving customers. The town had been pulling away from her slowly like a tide going out, and she couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started. Maybe it was when she'd spoken up at the town council meeting about the new highway route. Maybe it was when she'd refused to post that sign supporting the mayor's re-election. Maybe it was just because she was a woman running a business alone, and that made some people uncomfortable. "You should have sold when Harold made that offer," her father said, not for the first time. "Harold wanted to turn this place into a gun shop." "Money's money, baby girl." Isla finally turned to look at him. Her father had gotten old when she wasn't paying attention. His hands trembled on the table, liver-spotted and weak. The man who'd taught her to crack eggs one-handed and flip burgers with her eyes closed was disappearing day by day, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it except keep the diner open, keep the lights on, keep pretending everything was going to be fine. "This place is all we have left of Mama," she said softly. He nodded, understanding. They didn't talk about her mother much. Cancer had taken her 5 years back. But her presence was in every corner of the diner. The menu she'd designed, the curtains she'd sewn, the bell above the door she'd insisted on because she liked knowing when people arrived. That bell rang at 6:15 earlier than usual. Isla wiped her hands on her apron and pushed through the kitchen door, ready with her automatic smile and her waitress voice. The smile died. Officer Brent Hollis stood in her diner with his hand clamped around the arm of Marcus Johnson's boy. Little Deshaun, who couldn't be more than 12 years old, looked terrified. His backpack was open, contents spilled across the floor. School books, a lunchbox, a pack of pencils. "Morning, Isla." Brent's voice was pleasant, conversational, like he was just stopping by for coffee. "What's going on here?" "Caught this one trying to steal from the convenience store down the street." Deshaun's voice cracked. "I didn't steal nothing. I was just—" Brent jerked the boy's arm hard enough to make him stumble. "Shut your mouth when adults are talking." Something hot and dangerous flared in Isla's chest. She knew Brent Hollis. Everybody in Elkridge knew Brent Hollis. He'd been a bully in high school, and the badge had just made it official. "Let him go." Brent smiled. "Excuse me. I said let him go. You are hurting him. I'm doing my job." Brent's grip tightened and Deshaun whimpered. This boy was loitering outside the store at 6 in the morning. That's suspicious behavior. That's walking to school early. Not your concern, Isla. She stepped closer, her heart hammering. It is my concern. This is my diner, and you're scaring my customers. Brent looked around the empty restaurant with exaggerated slowness. What customers? The words hit like a slap, but Isla pushed forward. Deshaun, honey, did you steal anything? The boy shook his head frantically. No, ma'am, I swear. Mr. Chen knows me. I stop by every morning to say hi before school. He gives me gum sometimes. I didn't take nothing. Mr. Chen called it in, Brent said flatly. Then let's call him now. Isla reached for the phone behind the counter. Don't. Brent's voice dropped into something darker. Don't make this difficult. Difficult. You dragged the child into my diner and you're roughing him up over nothing. Over nothing? Brent yanked Deshaun forward again. I've got probable cause. I've got suspicious behavior. And I've got a kid with a history. He's 12 years old. What history? His brother's doing time in county for possession. Apple doesn't fall far. Ela felt her father's presence behind her, heard his sharp intake of breath. She knew what he was thinking. Don't do it. Don't make this worse. Don't paint a target on our backs. But she couldn't stop herself. That's his brother, not him. And you know it. Brent's jaw tightened. You questioning my judgment. I'm questioning why you're in my diner terrorizing a child instead of doing actual police work. The silence that followed was dangerous. Brent's face flushed red, the color creeping up from his collar. His free hand moved to his belt, fingers drumming against the leather. Isla, her father said quietly, maybe we should... No. She didn't take her eyes off Brent. Let the boy go. Now. Or what? It was a challenge and they both knew it. Isla could feel the moment crystallizing, becoming something bigger than just a Tuesday morning confrontation. She could feel the weight of every time she'd bitten her tongue, every time she'd smiled through disrespect, every time she'd let something slide because fighting wasn't worth it. This time felt different. Or I'll call Marcus Johnson myself, she said evenly. And then I'll call the newspaper. And then I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of police officer you are. Brent laughed, but it sounded forced. You're going to call the newspaper, sweetheart. Nobody cares what you think. You're a washed-up diner owner with a failing business and a don't you dare touch him. She'd moved without thinking, crossing the space between them in 3 quick steps. Her hand closed over Brent's wrist, the one gripping Deshaun, and she pulled. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make her point. Time seemed to stop. Brent stared at her hand on his wrist like she'd pulled a gun. His face went from red to purple, and something flashed in his eyes that made Ela's stomach drop. She'd made a mistake. She knew it immediately. You didn't touch a cop in Elkridge. You didn't challenge their authority. You definitely didn't do it in front of witnesses. But she didn't let go. Take your hand off me. Brent's voice was quiet now, deadly. Let go of the boy first. Isla, please. Deshaun was crying now, tears streaming down his face. It's okay. I'll go with him. It's okay. It's not okay, Isla said, still holding Brent's wrist. It's not okay at all. Her father's hand landed on her shoulder. Baby girl, think about what you're doing. She was thinking. She was thinking about every Deshaun who'd been grabbed and questioned and treated like a criminal for existing. She was thinking about her mother who'd marched in protest back in the 60s and came home with bruises she wouldn't explain. She was thinking about the kind of person she wanted to be when she looked in the mirror tomorrow morning. I'm thinking real clear, Daddy. Brent jerked his arm free, and Isla let him. But she stepped between him and Deshaun, physically blocking the officer with her body. Move, Brent ordered. No. I will arrest you for obstruction. Then arrest me. But you're not taking this boy anywhere without cause, without his parents, and without treating him like a human being. Brent's radio crackled. He grabbed it, eyes never leaving Isla's face. This is Hollis. I need backup at Brooks' Diner on Main Street. Situation escalating. Backup. Isla couldn't believe it. For what? A woman and a child. For someone interfering with police business. The next 5 minutes moved in slow motion. Another patrol car arrived, lights flashing. Officer Davis came through the door, each time a hand on his weapon, until he saw what was happening. Just Isla standing there, Deshaun behind her, Brent, looking like he wanted to put his fist through a wall. What's going on? Davis asked carefully. Brent pointed at Isla. She assaulted me. I touched your wrist. Physical contact with an officer during an arrest. What arrest? Isla's voice rose. You haven't arrested anybody. You just dragged a kid in here and started throwing accusations. Davis looked uncomfortable. He'd gone to school with Isla, had eaten at her diner every week for years. Isla, maybe you should step back. Not until someone explains to me what crime Deshaun committed. He doesn't need to explain anything to you, Brent snapped. Actually, Davis said slowly, she's got a point. What's the charge? Brent's face tightened. Attempted theft. Did Mr. Chen confirm that? Silence. Brent, did you actually talk to Mr. Chen, or did you just see a black kid and assume? The question hung in the air like smoke. Brent's jaw worked, but no words came out. Davis sighed, the kind of sigh that said he'd seen this before and was tired of it. Let the kid go, Davis said quietly. Like hell. Let him go. We'll sort this out at the station. Without the audience. For a moment, Isla thought Brent would refuse. His hand tightened on Deshaun's arm one more time, a final assertion of power. Then he shoved the boy forward hard enough that Deshaun stumbled into Isla's arms. This isn't over, Brent said, pointing at Isla. Not by a long shot. He stormed out, leaving Davis to gather Deshaun's scattered belongings. The officer handed the backpack to the boy with an apologetic smile. Sorry about that, kid. Get to school okay. Deshaun nodded, mutely clutching his backpack. He looked at Isla with wide eyes, something between gratitude and fear. Thank you, he whispered. You're okay now. Go on. She watched him run out the door, his small form disappearing down the street. Then her legs gave out, and she sank into the nearest booth. Her whole body was shaking. Davis sat across from her. You made an enemy today. I know. Brent's not gonna let this go. He'll make your life hell. I know that too. So why'd you do it? Isla looked at him, really looked at him. When had Davis gotten so old? When had all of them gotten so tired? Because somebody had to, she said simply. Davis nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess somebody did. He stood up, adjusted his belt. For what it's worth, you did the right thing, but the right thing's gonna cost you. He left her plantas there in the empty diner, the morning sun streaming through the windows, highlighting every crack in the linoleum, every stain on the walls, every sign of slow decay. Her father shuffled over and sat beside her. Well, he said, that was something. Hila started laughing. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, standing up to a cop over a kid she barely knew, putting everything at risk for a principal. Her father joined in his laugh, turning into a cough that shook his whole body. Mama would have been proud, he said when he caught his breath. Mama would have hit him with a frying pan. That too. They sat together in the empty diner, and Isla tried not to think about what came next. Tried not to imagine the phone calls that were already being made, the story spreading through town like wildfire. Tried not to picture her diner even emptier than it already was, the last few loyal customers deciding she was too much trouble. The phone rang at 8:30. Isla knew before she answered that it would be bad news. Brooks Diner. This is Sandra from Elkridge Power and Light. The woman's voice was professionally apologetic. I'm calling about your account. I'm on an extension. You said I had until the 15th. Yes, well, we've received some complaints about your business practices. Isla's blood went cold. What complaints? I'm not at liberty to say, but given the concerns raised, we'll need immediate payment to continue service. Full balance by 5 p.m. today, or we'll have to disconnect. That's not what we agreed on. I'm sorry, Ms. Brooks. Company policy. The line went dead. Isla held the phone, staring at it like it might suddenly start making sense. $4,000. She needed $4,000 by 5 o'clock, or the diner would go dark. How bad? Her father asked. Real bad. She spent the next hour on the phone calling everyone she could think of. The bank said no, she was already overextended on her line of credit. Her supplier said they couldn't help, she still owed them for last month. Her cousin in Atlanta said she'd love to help, but money was tight everywhere. By noon, Hila had exhausted every option. She stood behind the counter staring at the empty diner and felt the full weight of what she'd done. She'd chosen a principle over survival, and now she was going to lose everything. The bell above the door rang. Isla looked up, hope flaring for just a second. But it wasn't a customer. It was Mayor Pritchard, his considerable bulk filling the doorway, his face arranged in an expression of false concern. Ela heard you had some excitement this morning. News travels fast. Always does in a small town. He settled onto a stool at the counter even though she hadn't invited him to sit. Brent called me, said there was an incident. That what he called it? Said you assaulted him. Isla's hands clenched into fists. I touched his wrist while he was hurting a child. Well, now that's a matter of perspective, isn't it? Pritchard smiled, showing too many teeth. Brent says the boy was a suspect. You say different. He says you attacked him. You say you were protecting someone. See how this gets complicated. There's nothing complicated about it. Sure there is. See, Brent's filing a formal complaint. It could mean charges, could mean a trial. He paused. Could mean a lot of negative attention on this establishment. There it was, the threat wrapped in neighborly concern. What do you want? Isla asked flatly. When I don't want anything, I'm here as a friend to offer you a way out of this mess. I'm listening. Harold's still interested in buying this place. I talked to him this morning. He'd be willing to pay fair market value, take the property off your hands, assume your debts. You and your daddy could relocate somewhere quieter, somewhere less stressful. Ela felt something crack inside her chest. You're trying to run me out of town. I'm trying to help you see reason. You can't win this, Ela. Brent's got the whole department behind him. I've got the town council. You've got... He looked around the empty diner. What do you got exactly? I've got the truth. Pritchard laughed, a big booming sound. The truth? Honey, the truth is what people decide it is. And people in this town have decided that you're a troublemaker. They've decided that your diner is a place where officers get disrespected and criminals get coddled. You think that's fair? Maybe not, but it's true because enough people believe it. He stood up, adjusted his jacket. Think about Harold's offer. Think real hard, because things are going to get worse before they get better. And I'd hate to see you lose everything over some misguided sense of righteousness. After he left, Isla locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. It was only 1 p.m, but she couldn't bear to stay open, couldn't bear to watch the street and count the people who walked past without coming in. Her father was asleep in the back room. Isla sat in the corner booth and cried for the first time in 3 years. Not gentle tears, but the kind of sobbing that came from somewhere deep and primal. She cried for her mother, for her father's illness, for the diner that was dying no matter how hard she worked. She cried for Deshawn, for every kid who'd been treated like a criminal before they had had a chance to be anything else. She cried for herself, for the foolish hope that standing up would matter. The light through the window shifted from afternoon gold to evening amber. Isla didn't move. She watched the shadows lengthen across the floor and tried to figure out what came next. By 4:30, she'd made her decision. She'd call Harold, accept his offer, take whatever money she could get, and move her father somewhere safe. It was over. She'd fought the good fight and lost, and that was just how it went sometimes. She reached for the phone. The brick came through the window at exactly 4:47 p.m. Glass exploded inward, glittering in the fading sunlight. Isla threw her arms over her head, felt shards pepper her back. The brick landed on the counter with a heavy thud, wrapped in paper and rubber bands. She pulled off the paper with shaking hands. Someone had written in a red marker block letters, "Traitor." More sounds from outside. Not bricks this time, but voices, shouting, laughing. Isla crawled to the window and peeked over the sill. A crowd had gathered, 20, maybe 30 people. She recognized most of them neighbors, former customers, people she'd known her whole life. They were throwing things at her diner, eggs, tomatoes. One man had a can of spray paint tagging the side wall with words Isla couldn't quite make out. "Come out here, Ela," someone shouted. "Come out and face us." Her father appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" "Stay back, Daddy." Another brick. This one missed the window but dented the door. The crowd cheered. Isla felt her phone buzzing in her pocket, probably more threats, more people making sure she knew exactly how unwelcome she was. "We should call the police," her father said. Isla almost laughed. "And say what?" They waited in the dark as the crowd eventually dispersed their work done. When silence finally fell, Isla ventured outside to assess the damage. The walls were covered in spray paint. "Race traitor." Shut it down. Get out. Every window was broken or cracked. Her sign, the one her mother had commissioned 30 years ago, lay smashed on the sidewalk. The power company truck arrived at exactly 5 o'clock. The technician wouldn't look her in the eye as he cut the lines. Sorry, ma'am, he muttered. Just doing my job. And like that, everything went dark. Isla stood in front of her ruined diner and felt completely, utterly alone. She'd done the right thing. She knew she had. But the right thing had cost her everything, and now she was left with nothing but broken windows and the knowledge that sometimes courage wasn't enough. She helped her father back inside, found some candles, started cleaning up the glass by candlelight. The work was mindless, repetitive. It gave her something to focus on besides the crushing weight of failure. We'll rebuild, her father said quietly. We always do. But Isla wasn't sure she believed that anymore. The candles had burned down to nubs by the time Isla finished sweeping the glass. Her hands were raw, her back ached, and she couldn't stop shaking. Every sound from the street made her flinch, expecting another brick, another crowd, another wave of hatred. You should eat something, her father said from the darkness. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten all day. I said I'm not hungry. He was quiet for a moment, then softer. This is my fault. Isla stopped sweeping. What? I should have sold this place years ago. Should have taken you away from here after your mama died. Should have. Stop it. She crossed to him, knelt beside his chair. This isn't your fault. It's not anybody's fault except the people who threw those bricks. But if I'd been stronger, if I could still work, you wouldn't have to. Daddy, no. She took his trembling hands in hers. You gave me everything. This diner, this town, the backbone to stand up when it mattered. Don't you dare apologize for that. He squeezed her hands weakly. Your mama always said you had too much fire in you. Mama had twice as much, and you know it. They sat together in the darkness, and Isla tried to remember the last time she'd felt safe. Really safe, not just going through the motions. It had been years, maybe decades. Her phone buzzed again. She'd been ignoring it for hours, but something made her check this time. 47 text messages. She scrolled through them with growing dread. Hope you rot. Leave town while you still can. Your mother would be ashamed. We don't want your kind here. One message made her stop cold. It was from Sarah Mitchell, who used to bring her kids in every Saturday for pancakes. The message was simple. I'm sorry, Isla. I really am, but I can't be seen supporting you anymore. I hope you understand. Isla did understand. That was the worst part. She understood exactly how fear worked in a small town, how quickly people would abandon you to save themselves. She couldn't even be angry about it. She was about to put the phone down when it rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something instinct, desperation, pure stubbornness made her pick up. Hello, is this Isla Brooks? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Who's asking? My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm a reporter with the Regional Observer. I heard about what happened at your diner this morning, and I'd like to talk to you about it. Isla's heart jumped. How did you hear about it? Deshaun Johnson's mother called me. She said you stood up for her son when a police officer was harassing him. Is that true? For a moment, Isla couldn't speak. Marcus Johnson's wife had called the press. After everything that had happened after the mob and the broken windows and the death threats, someone had actually tried to help. Ms. Brooks, yes, Isla said quietly. Yes, that's true. I'd like to come down tomorrow and interview you, get your side of the story. Officer Hollis has already made a statement claiming you assaulted him, and I think the public deserves to hear what really happened. The public in this town has already decided what they think. I'm not talking about this town. I'm talking about people who might actually care about justice. Isla closed her eyes. Come tomorrow if you want, but I can't promise you much of a story. Just a woman who made a stupid decision and lost everything because of it. That's exactly the story I'm looking for, Jennifer said. See you at 9. The diner's closed. No power. Then we'll talk by candlelight. A pause. Ms. Brooks, what you did took courage. Don't let them make you forget that. After she hung up, Isla sat staring at her phone. One reporter, one person who thought her story mattered. It wasn't much, but it was something. Who was that? Her father asked. Maybe a miracle, maybe nothing. I'll find out tomorrow. She helped him to bed, made sure he took his pills, waited until his breathing evened out into sleep. Then she went back to the main room and looked at the destruction. In the candlelight, it looked even worse, shadows making the spray paint seem alive, the broken glass glittering like stars in a dead sky. She should sleep. She knew that. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Brent's face, heard his threats, felt the crowd's hatred washing over her like a physical force. At 2 in the morning, headlights swept across the broken windows. Isla's stomach clenched. She grabbed the baseball bat she kept behind the counter, her mother's old bat, the one she'd used in her church league days, and moved toward the door. A car door slammed. Footsteps on the sidewalk. Then a knock, soft and hesitant. "Ms. Brooks, it's Officer Davis." Isla cracked the door open, bat still in hand. Davis stood on her doorstep in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable and tired. "Little late for a social call," she said. "I know, He ran a hand through his hair. "I needed to tell you something. Off the record." "Off the record from a cop. That's reassuring. Can I come in?" Against her better judgment, Isla let him in. They sat at the counter, the candles casting long shadows across Davis's face. "Brent's building a case against you," he said without preamble. "Assault on an officer, obstruction of justice. He's trying to get the DA to press charges." I touched his wrist. "I know, but he's got photos of where you grabbed him. Claims you left bruises. Claims you threatened him." Isla felt the floor drop out from under her. "That's a lie." "I know it is, but it's his word against yours, and he's got the badge." Davis leaned forward. "There's more. Mayor Pritchard is pushing the town council to revoke your business license. Claims the diner's become a public nuisance. Claims you're inciting violence." "I'm inciting violence. Did you see what they did to my place?" I also saw the police report. According to Brent, you provoked the crowd by posting inflammatory statements on social media." "I don't even have social media." Davis pulled out his phone, showed her a Facebook page. "Brooks Diner," it said at the top. But the posts were things Isla would never write, rants about corrupt police calls for protests, accusations against town officials. The latest post, time-stamped an hour before the mob arrived, read, "If you support Officer Hollis, you support racism. Period. Don't come to my diner if you're on the wrong side of history." "That's not me," Isla whispered. "Someone made a fake account." "I know, but try proving it. Page looks real, has photos of the diner, even has some old posts that seem legitimate. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing." Isla felt sick. They weren't just trying to run her out of town. They were trying to destroy her completely, make sure she couldn't fight back, couldn't defend herself, couldn't even tell her side of the story. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Davis was quiet for a long moment. "Because I've got a daughter, she's 7, and I keep thinking about what I'd want someone to do if she was in Deshawn's position. If some cop was roughing her up for no reason." He met Isla's eyes. "I'd want someone like you to step in, even if it cost them everything." "Well, it did, so I hope that makes you feel better." "It doesn't." He stood up. "But for what it's worth, you're not alone, not completely." "Feels pretty alone from where I'm sitting." "There are people talking, quietly. People who saw what happened, who know Brent's reputation, people who are tired of the way things work in this town." He headed for the door, then turned back. "That reporter who called you, talk to her. Tell your story. It might not change anything here, but it'll get the truth out there." After he left, Isla sat in the darkness and tried to process everything. A fake social media account, charges being filed, her business license under threat. They weren't just pushing back, they were trying to erase her. She must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing she knew, dawn was breaking through the broken windows and someone was pounding on the door. "Ms. Brooks, Isla Brooks, open up." Isla stumbled to the door, still half asleep. A woman in her 30s stood there with a camera crew microphone in hand, professionally bright smile fixed in place. "Jennifer Chen." "That's me. Hope you don't mind. I brought the crew early. Wanted to get footage of the damage in the morning light." She gestured to the spray-painted walls. "This is even worse than I expected. It was a long night." "I bet." Jennifer's smile softened into something more genuine. "Why don't you walk me through what happened? Start to finish. Don't leave anything out." For the next hour, Isla told her story. She started with Deshawn, with Brent's hand on the boy's arm, with the decision to step in. She talked about the mayor's visit, the mob, the threats. Jennifer's camera operator captured everything: the broken windows, the hate speech on the walls, the darkness inside where the power had been cut. "And you're facing criminal charges for this?" Jennifer asked her reporter's mask slipping to show genuine outrage. "According to Officer Davis, yes. For touching a cop's wrist while he was hurting a child. That's about the size of it." Jennifer looked at her notes, then back at Isla. "Do you regret it, stepping in?" Isla thought about the question. Did she regret it? She'd lost her business, her community, possibly her freedom. She'd put her father at risk, made herself a target, destroyed everything she'd spent years building. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that we live in a world where standing up for a kid makes you an enemy. But I don't regret doing it." Jennifer nodded slowly. "That's going to make one hell of a headline." The interview wrapped up around 10. Jennifer promised the story would run online by evening and print by tomorrow. She gave Hila her card, told her to call if anything else happened. "And it will," Jennifer warned. "Once this story goes live, you're going to get attention. Some good, some bad. Be ready." After they left, Isla tried to clean up more, but her heart wasn't in it. What was the point? Even if she got the power back on, even if she fixed the windows, who would come? The town had made its position clear. Her father emerged around 11, moving slower than usual. "How you feeling?" Hila asked. "Like I'm 100 years old." He settled into his usual booth. "That reporter, come by." "Yeah, story runs tonight. Think it'll help?" "I don't know, Daddy. I honestly don't know." The day dragged on. Isla called the power company again, no luck. Called a glazier about the windows, he'd get back to her, which meant never. Called Harold about his offer, but couldn't bring herself to accept it yet. Giving up felt too much like letting them win. At 3 o'clock, her phone started blowing up. The story had gone live early. Isla pulled it up with shaking hands. The headline read, "Small-town diner owner faces charges after defending child from police harassment." Jennifer hadn't held back. She'd laid out everything: Brent's history of complaints, the suspicious timing of the fake Facebook page, the mob violence that the police had done nothing to stop. She'd interviewed Deshawn's mother, who'd broken down crying on camera, talking about how terrified her son had been. She'd even tracked down other parents whose kids had been hassled by Brent, building a pattern of behavior that made Isla's intervention look not just justified, but necessary. The comments section was exploding, thousands of them coming in faster than Isla could read. "This is outrageous. How is this happening in America? Someone start a GoFundMe for this woman. That cop should be in jail, not her." But mixed in with the support were darker messages. People calling her a race traitor, saying she got what she deserved, threatening worse to come. Isla forced herself to stop reading. "It's viral," her father said, looking at his own phone. "Baby girl, you're famous." Great, famous and broke. But something was happening. Her phone kept ringing, other reporters, people offering support, someone from a civil rights organization wanting to discuss legal representation. The attention was overwhelming, almost as scary as the mob had been. At 5 o'clock, someone knocked on the door. Not the aggressive pounding from before, but a tentative tap. Isla approached carefully. Marcus Johnson stood on her doorstep, hat in his hands, eyes red. "Mr. Johnson." "Miss Brooks, His voice broke. "My boy came home yesterday scared out of his mind. My wife and we tried to figure out what to do, who to call, and then we heard what you did. What you lost because of it. I didn't lose anything I'm not willing to give up." "That's not true, and we both know it." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "It's not much, $300. It's what we had saved for Deshawn's birthday. But we want you to have it." "Mr. Johnson, no, I can't. Please." He pressed the envelope into her hands. "My son is alive and unharmed because of you. $300 is nothing compared to that. It's less than nothing." Isla felt tears building. "Thank you." "No, ma'am. Thank you for seeing my boy as a person, for standing up when everybody else looked away." He put his hat back on. "You need anything, you call me. I mean that." After he left, Isla opened the envelope. Inside the cash was a note in a child's handwriting. "Thank you for saving me. I won't forget. Deshawn." She sat down hard, the tears finally coming. $300 wouldn't save the diner. It wouldn't bring back her customers or fix the windows or make the town forgive her. But it meant something. It meant she'd been right to stand up. It meant her choice had mattered. The rest of the evening brought more surprises. A woman from Atlanta sent $500 through PayPal with a note from one woman who wouldn't back down to another. A lawyer called and offering pro bono representation if charges were filed. Someone started a GoFundMe without Isla's permission, and by midnight it had raised $8,000. People care, her father said wonderingly. Total strangers, and they care. Some of them do, Isla agreed. Others want me dead. Guess that's what viral means. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Every creak of the building made her tense, waiting for more violence. Around 2 in the morning, she heard an engine outside, deep and throaty. Definitely not a car. Isla grabbed the bat again and moved to the window. A single headlight cut through the darkness. A motorcycle big and chrome-heavy pulled up in front of the diner. The rider killed the engine, climbed off slowly. Even in the darkness, Isla could see the patch on his back. Hell's Angels. The skull and wings were unmistakable. Her heart hammered. Hell's Angels in Elkridge. That was going to go over real well. The man approached the door but didn't knock. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting, like he had all the time in the world. Isla debated pretending she wasn't there, but something about the way he stood patient, non-threatening, made her crack the door open. "We're closed," she said. "I can see that." His voice was rough-weathered. "Saw your story online. Figured I'd ride down, see if the place was still standing." "Barely. Mind if I come in? I'm not here to cause trouble." Everything in Isla's survival instinct screamed no, but she'd spent the last 2 days watching her safe, careful world fall apart. What was one more risk? She opened the door. The man stepped inside, and in the candlelight, Isla got her first good look at him. Late 50s, maybe early 60s, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen too much. His leather cut was worn soft with age, covered in patches and pins. He moved like someone who'd been in his share of fights and didn't have anything left to prove. "Sam Taylor," he said, extending a hand. "Isla Brooks. Pleasure's mine. Listen, I know how this looks. Big scary biker shows up in the middle of the night, but I read what you did for that kid and He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My nephew's black, lives in Georgia. He's 15 now, and every time he leaves the house, his mama worries she won't see him again. So when I read about you standing between that cop and that boy, knowing what it would cost you," he shook his head. "That took guts, real guts. The kind most people don't have, or the kind that makes you stupid. Sometimes there's not much difference." He glanced around the destroyed diner. "You got coffee?" "No power." "Right." He pulled out a thermos from his jacket. "Brought my own. Hope you don't mind." They sat at the counter sharing coffee from Sam's thermos, and Isla found herself talking. Really talking, not the careful edited version she'd given the reporter, but the messy truth. How scared she'd been. How alone she felt. How she kept wondering if standing up had been worth destroying her entire life. "It was worth it," Sam said firmly. "You don't get to see the ripples you made. That kid Deshaun, he's going to remember you forever. He's going to know that at least one person in this world thought he was worth defending. That's going to shape who he becomes. If the town doesn't destroy me first, they might try. But here's what I know about small-town bullies. They're cowards. Push back hard enough, they fold." He drained the last of his coffee. "You ever hear the story about the Hollister riot?" "Can't say I have." 1947, bunch of bikers roll into this tiny California town for a rally. Town's all upset, thinking we're going to burn the place down. There's some trouble, yeah, but mostly it's just regular folks getting worked up over nothing. Point is, the town painted us as monsters, and we went along with it. Figured if they wanted monsters, we'd give on monsters. That's supposed to make me feel better. Sam smiled. "What I'm saying is sometimes the monster image works in your favor. People expect you to roll over, you bare your teeth. Instead, they don't know what to do. I'm not a biker. I'm just a woman with a failing diner." "Nah, you're someone who stood up when it mattered. That makes you dangerous to people like your mayor, like that cop. Because if one person stands up, maybe others will too. Maybe the whole system they've built on fear and silence starts to crack." They talked until dawn started breaking. Sam told her about his club, about the brotherhood, about what it meant to stand by your people, no matter what. Isla told him about her mother, about the diner's history, about the version of Elkridge that used to exist before fear took over. When Sam finally stood to leave, he pulled a card from his wallet. "You need anything, and I mean anything, you call that number." Someone will answer. We take care of our own, and far as I'm concerned, you're one of us now. I'm not a Hell's Angel. No, but you got the spirit. That counts for something. He headed for the door, then turned back. Don't give up on this place yet. I got a feeling things are about to get interesting. After he left, Hila sat in the growing light and thought about monsters and cowards and what it meant to bare your teeth. Sam was right about one thing: she'd spent so long trying to be acceptable, trying to keep her head down, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be dangerous. Maybe it was time to remember. Her phone rang, unknown number again. Hello, is this Isla Brooks? A young man's voice, nervous. Who's asking? My name's Tyler Chen. I'm Mr. Chen's son. From the convenience store. Isla's heart sank. Listen, I'm sorry about what happened with... No, that's why I'm calling. My dad didn't call the police. Officer Hollis made that up. Deshaun comes by every morning. My dad loves that. Kid gives him free gum, asks about school. There's security footage showing the whole thing. Deshaun never stole anything, never even went inside that morning. You have footage. Yeah, and it shows Officer Hollis grabbing Deshaun outside before he even reached the store. Just grabbed him for no reason. Tyler paused. My dad was too scared to come forward, but I'm not. I'm sending the footage to that reporter, Miss Chen, and I'm testifying if this goes to court. After they hung up, Isla sat staring at her phone. Evidence, real evidence that Brent had lied. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was something. It was ammunition. She called Jennifer Chen immediately. I've got a witness, Isla said. One with video footage. Send me his contact information right now. By noon, Jennifer had spoken with Tyler and secured the footage. By 2, she'd published a follow-up story with the headline, Security Footage Contradicts Officer's Account of Arrest. The video spread even faster than the original story. It showed everything: Brent grabbing Deshaun without cause, the boy protesting his innocence, Brent dragging him toward the diner, while other officers stood by and watched. It showed Isla coming out, standing between them, showed the exact moment she touched Brent's wrist to make him let go. No assault, no attack. Just a woman protecting a child. The comments exploded. That cop needs to be arrested. How is she the one facing charges? This is exactly what is wrong with America. Within hours, the story had been picked up by national news. CNN ran a segment. The New York Times called for an interview. Suddenly, Elkridge wasn't just a small town anymore. It was a symbol of everything broken in the system. And Isla sat in her dark diner, watching her phone light up with messages, and wondered what the hell happened next. The phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days straight. Isla stopped answering after the first 100 calls. Half of them were reporters wanting interviews. The other half were threats detailed enough to make her hands shake. Someone left a voicemail describing exactly how they planned to burn the diner down with her inside it. Another promised they knew where her father went for his doctor's appointments. We need to leave, her father said on the third morning. His voice was steady, but Isla could see the fear in his eyes. Pack up, take the GoFundMe money. Start over somewhere else. Running's just another way of losing. Staying might get us killed. He wasn't wrong. The national attention had split the town into 2 camps, and the people who hated Isla now hated her louder, harder, with the kind of rage that came from being exposed. The security footage had made them look like fools on a national stage, and they wanted blood for it. Isla was cleaning the counter, pointless busy work, since nobody was coming in anyway, when she heard the motorcycle. Just one at first, that familiar rumble that could only be Sam's bike. She glanced out the broken window and felt her stomach drop. It wasn't just Sam. There were 5 bikes behind him. 10, 20. They kept coming rolling down Main Street in a thunder of chrome and leather, filling the air with exhaust and noise. Isla stepped outside, her father shuffling behind her, and they both stood there watching as motorcycle after motorcycle pulled up in front of the diner. Sam climbed off his bike, pulled off his helmet, and grinned. Told you things were about to get interesting. What is this? Reinforcements. He gestured to the growing crowd of bikers. Word got out about your situation. Turns out a lot of folks don't take kindly to small-town cops terrorizing kids and women who stand up for them. A woman with silver hair and a cut covered in patches walked up beside Sam. She was maybe 60, with the kind of face that said she'd survived things most people couldn't imagine. You must be Isla, she said, her voice warm. I'm Rose, Sam's old lady. Old lady? His wife, honey, though I prefer to think of him as my old man. She smiled. We brought some friends. More bikers were arriving. Isla counted 30, 40, 50. They filled the street, their bikes lined up like a wall of metal and machinery. People were coming out of shops and houses, staring at the spectacle, with expressions ranging from fear to fascination to outright hostility. "You can't park here!" someone shouted from across the street. Isla recognized him, Todd Brennan, who worked at the hardware store and had been part of the mob 3 nights ago. "This is illegal assembly." Sam turned slowly, his expression casual. "We're not assembling, we're visiting a friend. Last I checked, that wasn't illegal." "You're blocking traffic." "What traffic?" Rose gestured to the empty street. "Ain't nobody driving through here but us." More bikers kept arriving. 60, 70. The roar of engines was deafening, beautiful, terrifying. Isla felt something shifting in her chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. These people, these strangers, had driven however many miles to stand with her. "I don't understand," she said to Sam. "Why would you do this?" "Because you stood up. Because somebody needed to show this town that they can't just terrorize people into silence." He gestured to the crowd of bikers. "Every person here has a story. Every person here knows what it's like to be judged, to be treated like garbage because of how they look or who they love or what they choose to wear. You think we're going to let that happen to someone who defended a kid?" A police car pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Davis got out, and Isla could see the exact moment he realized how outnumbered he was. To his credit, he walked up to Sam, calmly, hands visible, no aggression. "Folks, I'm going to need you to disperse. You're creating a public disturbance." "We're having coffee," Sam said pleasantly. "Or we would be if this fine establishment had power. Seems like the power company cut off a paying customer without proper notice. That legal in this town?" Davis's jaw tightened. "That's between Ms. Brooks and the utility company." "Funny how it happened right after she stood up to one of your boys. Real convenient timing. I don't control the power company." "But your boss does. Mayor Pritchard sits on their board, doesn't he?" Sam pulled out his phone, started scrolling. "Yeah, here it is. Pritchard's been on the board of directors since 2019. And somehow, within hours of Isla here making him look bad, her power gets cut. You seeing the pattern, I'm seeing." Davis didn't answer. He couldn't, and they all knew it. More police cars arrived. Then news vans, cameras rolling, reporters scrambling to capture the standoff. Within an hour, Main Street looked like a circus. 100 bikers now, maybe more, they're all wearing their cuts, all standing firm. And in the middle of it all was Isla, feeling more exposed and protected than she'd ever felt in her life. "Ms. Brooks," a reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "How does it feel to have the Hells Angels supporting you?" "I don't know how to answer that." "Did you ask them to come?" "No, they came on their own." "Are you afraid this will escalate the violence?" Sam stepped between Isla and the reporter. "No more questions. The lady's been through enough." "But the public has a right to..." "The public can wait." Sam's voice went hard. "She'll talk when she's ready. Right now, she's got friends to attend to." He guided Isla back toward the diner, Rose on her other side. Inside, away from the cameras and chaos, Isla finally let herself break down. "This is insane," she sobbed. "This is completely insane." "Yeah," Rose agreed, rubbing her back. "But sometimes insane is what you need. Sometimes you gotta fight crazy with crazy. I just wanted to help a kid, that's all. I didn't want any of this. Nobody ever wants to be the lightning rod, honey. But here you are crackling with electricity, and you got a choice. You can ground yourself and let it all dissipate, or you can aim it at the people who deserve it." Isla looked up at her. "How do I do that?" "By not backing down, by letting us stand with you. By showing this town that they picked the wrong woman to terrorize." Rose smiled. "And by letting us fix your damn diner while we're at it." Over the next few hours, the bikers transformed the street into something that looked like a block party. Someone produced a generator, other person had tools, and suddenly the broken windows were being boarded up properly. The spray paint was being scrubbed off. The glass was being swept away. People brought food casseroles and sandwiches and thermoses of coffee. Someone set up a grill and started cooking burgers. "We can't afford to pay you," Isla protested. "Who asked you to pay her?" Sam was up on a ladder securing plywood over the front window. "We're not contractors. We're friends helping out. But I don't know any of you." "You do now." Hila watched them work these strangers who'd ridden hundreds of miles to defend someone they'd never met and felt something breaking open inside her. She'd spent so long being alone, being careful, being afraid to ask for help, because help always came with strings attached. But this was different. These people wanted nothing from her except the satisfaction of doing what was right. Her father came outside moving slowly, watching the controlled chaos with wonder. "Your mama would have loved this," he said. "Mama would have been up on that ladder with them." Nah, she would have been organizing, making sure everyone had food and water, making sure the work got done right. He squeezed her hand. "She would have been proud of you, baby girl. So damn proud." By evening, the diner looked almost functional. The windows were covered, the walls were clean, the generator was humming. The bikers had even managed to rig up temporary lights inside. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Sam called everyone together in the street. 100 bikers, maybe more, they're all gathered around him. "Listen up," he shouted. "We came here to support Isla Brooks, to show this town that they can't bully someone who stands up for what's right. But we're not staying forever. Some of us got jobs, families' lives to get back to." He paused. "So here's what's going to happen. We're going to leave a presence, rotating shifts, a few bikes here at all times just to make sure nobody gets any bright ideas about finishing what they started. And if anything happens, if anyone threatens Isla, if anyone tries to hurt her or her father, we come back. All of us, with friends." "Understood." The bikers cheered, engines revving in agreement. Isla felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were different tears. These were the kind that came from being seen, being valued, being protected by people who owed her nothing. "Speech," someone yelled. "Come on, Isla, say something." She didn't want to. Public speaking had never been her thing. But they were all looking at her waiting, and she owed them at least a few words. "I don't know what to say," she started, her voice shaking. "A week ago, I was just running failing diner, trying to take care of my father, trying to survive. Then I made one decision, one stupid, reckless, probably foolish decision, and my whole world fell apart. But it also opened up. Because of all of you. Because you saw someone who needed help and you showed up. You didn't ask what you'd get out of it. You didn't worry about what it would cost you. You just came." Her voice broke. Rose squeezed her shoulder, giving her strength to continue. "My whole life I've been told to keep my head down. Don't make waves. Don't stand out. Be acceptable. Be quiet. Be safe. And I tried. God knows I tried. But safe wasn't protecting that boy. Safe wasn't standing up to bullies with badges. Safe was just another word for complicit." She looked around at all the faces, weathered and young, hard and kind. "You all taught me something today. You taught me that there are still people who believe in standing together, who believe that one person's fight is everyone's fight. And I'm grateful. I'm so incredibly grateful." The bikers erupted in cheers and applause. Engines revved, horns honked. Someone set off a firework that probably wasn't legal. And in that moment, standing in front of her rebuilt diner with 100 outlaws celebrating around her, Hila felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt powerful. The celebration went late into the night. Eventually, most of the bikers left, heading to a motel 2 towns over, or camping out in the woods nearby. But 6 of them stayed parking their bikes in a protective semicircle around the diner. Sam and Rose were among them. "You don't have to do this," Isla said. "Yeah, we do," Sam replied. "Get some sleep. We'll keep watch." Inside the diner, with the generator humming and temporary lights casting everything in a warm glow, Isla and her father sat at the counter. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. They just sat together, processing everything that had happened, everything that had changed. Around midnight, another knock. Isla tensed, but Sam's voice called out, "It's okay. Someone here to see you." She opened the door to find Officer Davis standing there now in full uniform, looking deeply uncomfortable. Behind him, trying to look casual and failing, was Mayor Pritchard. "Gentlemen," Hila said coldly, "little late for a visit." "Ms. Brooks," Pritchard started, his usual bluster notably absent. "I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About how you tried to run me out of town, about the fake Facebook page, about cutting my power. Now let's not make accusations we can't prove." Sam stepped up behind Isla. "We're real good at proving things. Got some tech-savvy friends who'd love to trace where that Facebook page originated. Want us to dig into that? Pritchard's face went pale. That won't be necessary. Then what do you want? Isla asked. Davis spoke up, looking pained. The DA is dropping all charges against you, insufficient evidence. The security footage made it clear that you acted to protect a minor from excessive force. How generous. And Pritchard added quickly, the town council has decided not to pursue the business license revocation. Given the national attention, it wouldn't look good. Wouldn't look good, Hila repeated. So you're not doing this because it's right. You're doing it because you're scared of how it looks. Does it matter? Pritchard tried for a smile. The end result is the same. You get to keep your diner. What about my power? That's a private company matter, but I'm sure we can work something out. Maybe by tomorrow afternoon. Isla looked at Sam, who shrugged, then at Davis, who couldn't meet her eyes. These men hadn't come here to apologize. They'd come here to save face, to make the bad publicity go away. They wanted her to smile and nod and pretend everything was fine now. Get out, she said quietly. Pritchard blinked. Excuse me, I said get out. You come to my diner at midnight after you tried to destroy my life, and you expect me to thank you for not finishing the... get out. Now, Isla, be reasonable. She said get out, Sam's voice was steel, unless you want to explain to those reporters out there why the mayor's harassing a woman at midnight. Pritchard looked like he wanted to argue, but Davis grabbed his arm. Come on, we tried. After they left, Isla's hands started shaking. The adrenaline that had kept her upright drained away, leaving her hollow and exhausted. You okay? Rose asked. No, but I will be. She locked the door, checked on her father already asleep in the back room, and tried to settle down herself. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Brent's face, heard the mob shouting, felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. Around 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went back out to the main room. Through the boarded windows, she could see the bikers on watch, sitting on their bikes, smoking cigarettes, keeping guard. These strangers who'd become her shield. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You think some bikers scare us? Wait until they leave. Hila stared at the message, felt the fear trying to claw its way back in. Then she took a screenshot, sent it to Jennifer Chen, and deleted the original. Let them threaten. She had proof now. She had witnesses. She had people who gave a damn. The next morning brought more surprises. The power company truck showed up at 8 a.m. sharp, the same technician who'd cut her lines looking sheepish as he reconnected them. The lights flickered on the refrigerator, hummed to life, and Isla felt tears prick her eyes at something as simple as electricity. Thank you, she told the technician. Just doing my job, ma'am. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about before. Shouldn't have happened that way. More people started showing up. Not bikers this time, but regular folks. Mrs. Patterson from the library, who brought fresh flowers. Mr. Wu from the laundromat, who pressed $200 into Isla's hand and refused to take it back. Even some of her old customers, looking ashamed but determined, filing in one by one. We should have stood with you, Sarah Mitchell said, her voice breaking. When they came after you, we should have said something. Done something. I'm so sorry, Isla. You're here now, Ella said. That's what matters. By 10 a.m., the diner was fuller than it had been in months. People sat at the counter, filled the booths, lined up for coffee. The bikers mixed in with the townspeople, and if anyone was uncomfortable with the leather and patches, they kept it to themselves. Hila was pouring coffee when she heard the commotion outside. Through the window, she saw Brent Hollis standing across the street, glaring at the diner. He was in civilian clothes, no badge visible, but his stance was unmistakable. Sam noticed him too. Want me to handle that? No. Isla wiped her hands on her apron. I'll handle it. She walked outside, crossed the street, stood face to face with the man who tried to destroy her. Up close, she could see that he looked rough. Unshaven eyes red, a rage simmering just beneath the surface. Something I can help you with, Brent. You ruined my life, he said, his voice shaking. I'm suspended pending investigation. My wife left me. My own department won't talk to me. All because you couldn't mind your own business. All because you can't do your job without abusing your power. That kid was suspicious. That kid was 12 years old and walking to school. Brent stepped closer and Isla smelled alcohol on his breath. You think you won? You think your biker friends scare me. They'll leave eventually, and when they do, you're going to wish you'd kept your mouth shut. Is that a threat, Officer Hollis? Sam had materialized beside Isla along with three other bikers. Because it sure sounds like a threat. I'm not a cop anymore, remember? You saw to that. No, Isla said firmly. You saw to that. Every complaint filed against you, every parent who said you harassed their kid, every person you terrorized because you had a badge, that's what ended your career, not me. You did this to yourself. Brent's face went purple. For a second, Isla thought he might actually swing at her. But then Davis's patrol car pulled up and the moment passed. Everything okay here? Davis asked, getting out slowly. Just a friendly conversation. Sam said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. Brent, you need to go home, Davis said quietly. You're drunk, you're off duty, and you're making a scene. I'm making a scene. Look at this circus. Brent gestured wildly at the diner that bikes the crowd. This is what you're allowing. This is what passes for law and order in Elkridge now. Law and order. Hila laughed bitterly. You wouldn't know law and order if it arrested you, which given enough time, it probably will. You better watch yourself. No, you better watch yourself, because every word you just said, it's being recorded. She held up her phone, camera running. And if anything happens to me, to my father, to this diner, everyone's going to know exactly who to look at first. Brent lunged forward, but Davis grabbed him. That's enough. Get in the car. Now. They wrestled Brent into the patrol car, him shouting threats the whole way. The crowd watched in silence until the car disappeared down the street. Well, Rose said, breaking the tension, that was exciting. Who wants breakfast? The laughter that followed was nervous but real. People filed back into the diner the moment passing, but Isla couldn't shake the look in Brent's eyes. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. She was refilling coffee when the bell over the door rang again. A woman walked in mid-40s wearing a business suit that screamed lawyer. She walked straight up to Isla. Ms. Brooks, I'm Catherine Price. I represent the ACLU. I'd like to discuss taking legal action against Officer Hollis and the Elkridge Police Department for civil rights violations. Would you be interested in pursuing that? Isla set down the coffee pot. Legal action, a civil suit, based on the pattern of behavior documented in Officer Hollis's file, combined with the department's failure to address it, I believe we have a strong case, not just for you, but for Deshaun Johnson and any other victims of police harassment in this town. That would mean more attention, more scrutiny, more people digging into my life. It would also mean accountability. It would mean change. Catherine pulled out a card. Think about it. Talk to your family, but know that you have options. What happened to you wasn't just wrong, it was illegal, and someone needs to answer for it. After she left, Illa stood behind the counter staring at the business card. A lawsuit. Taking on the police department, the mayor, maybe the whole town power structure. It would be a war long and costly and painful. But it would also be justice. What do you think, Daddy? She asked when the lunch rush finally died down. Her father looked at her with tired eyes. I think your mama didn't raise you to back down from a fight. I think you already know what you're going to do. He was right. She did know. Isla called Catherine Price and told her yes. The decision to sue changed everything overnight. Catherine Price filed the paperwork on Friday afternoon, and by Saturday morning, every news outlet in the region had picked up the story. Isla woke to her phone exploding with notifications, some supportive, others vicious enough to make her stomach turn. You sure about this? Sam asked over coffee. He and Rose had stayed on taking shifts with other bikers who rotated through every few days. Once you start down this road, there's no turning back. I've been sure since the moment I touched Brent's wrist. Everything after that's just been me catching up to my own courage. Rose laughed. I like her. She talks like someone who's already dead and decided to haunt her enemies while she's still breathing. The diner had become something else entirely in the weeks since the bikers arrived. No longer just a restaurant, it was a statement, a line in the sand. People drove from 3 counties away just to eat there, to take photos, to be part of the story. The GoFundMe had reached $40,000. Isla had paid off her debts, fixed the windows properly, even hired back her old cook who'd quit 6 months ago when she couldn't afford to pay him anymore. But success brought its own problems. The town council called an emergency meeting about the increased traffic. The police started writing tickets for any bike parked more than 12 inches from the curb. Someone spray painted "Go home" on the side of Sam's bike 3 nights in a row until he finally just left it there, added "Make me" underneath in bigger letters. "They're trying to wear us down," Rose observed, watching another cop write another bogus ticket. "Classic intimidation. Make it so annoying to stay that we eventually leave." "Will you?" Isla asked. "Eventually." "That depends. You planning on keeping that fire burning, or you gonna let them smother it?" Hila didn't get a chance to answer. The bell rang, and Marcus Johnson walked in with Deshaun. The boy had been back a few times since that first morning, usually with his mother always quiet and polite. But today something was different. Deshaun's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. "What happened?" Hila rushed over. Marcus's jaw was tight. "Tell her son." Deshaun stared at the floor. "Some kids at school. They said their dads told them that I got Officer Hollis fired. They said I ruined his life. They said," his voice cracked, "they said I should have just cooperated. That none of this would have happened if I'd just done what he said. They jumped him after school." Marcus added, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. 5 against 1. 12-year-old boys beating on my son because their parents fed them poison. Hila felt something snap inside her. "Did you report it?" "To who?" "The police department that's defending Hollis. The school administration that's afraid of losing funding if they make waves." Marcus sat down heavily. "We came to tell you we're leaving Elk Ridge. My wife got a job offer in Charlotte. We're taking it, getting out while we still can. You're running. We're surviving. There's a difference." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much disappointment. "You did a brave thing, Ms. Brooks, a necessary thing. But bravery don't pay the hospital bills when they come after my boy again. Bravery don't keep my wife from crying herself to sleep every night terrified that the next beating's gonna be worse." Deshaun was crying now, quiet tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Ms. Brooks. I'm sorry I caused all this trouble." Hila knelt in front of him, took his hands. "You listen to me, Deshaun Johnson. You didn't cause anything. You were walking to school. That's all. Everything that happened after, that's on the adults who forgot how to be decent human beings. You hear me?" He nodded, but she could see he didn't believe it. How could he? He was 12 years old, and the world had just taught him that standing up meant getting beat down. After they left, Isla stood behind the counter, feeling the weight of it all, pressing down on her shoulders. She thought standing up would inspire others. Instead, she'd driven one of the people she was trying to protect out of town entirely. "Don't do that," Sam said quietly. "Do what?" "Blame yourself for other people's evil. You didn't make those kids jump, Deshaun. You didn't create the system that makes his parents feel like running's the only option. You just shined a light on it. What people do with that light that's on them. Easy for you to say. You get to ride out of here whenever you want. Deshaun doesn't get to ride out of his skin." Sam nodded slowly. "You're right. And that's exactly why this fight matters. Because kids like Deshaun shouldn't have to run. They should be able to walk to school without being grabbed by cops. They should be able to go to school without being jumped by kids whose parents taught them hate. But that don't happen unless people like you refuse to back down." The lunch rush came and went. Isla served customers on autopilot, her mind elsewhere. Around 2, Catherine Price showed up with news. "We've got a problem," she said, sliding into a booth. "Hollis's lawyer is filing a countersuit. Defamation, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They're claiming your media campaign destroyed his reputation and career." Isla laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My media campaign, I just told the truth. Truth is a defense against defamation, but they're not going to make this easy. They've got witnesses who will testify that you've been encouraging the bikers to intimidate local law enforcement. They've got documentation of every ticket written, every complaint filed. They're building a narrative that you're the aggressor here. That's insane. That's legal strategy." Catherine pulled out a folder. "We need to be smart about this. No more confrontations. No more public statements without running them by me first. And we need to think about optics. The bikers are great for protection, but they're also feeding into the narrative that you're leading some kind of rebellion. Maybe I am." "Isla," Catherine's voice went hard, "I'm trying to win you a case, not make you a martyr. There's a difference." Before Isla could respond, the bell rang again. This time it was Sheriff Mitchell, not Officer Davis, but the actual sheriff, a man Isla had known since high school. Tom Mitchell had been quarterback when she'd been on the debate team. Now he wore a badge and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Isla, can we talk privately? They went to the back room away from the customers and the bikers. Tom took off his hat, ran a hand through his graying hair. This has got to stop, he said. I agree. Tell Brent Hollis to stop threatening me. I'm not talking about Brent. I'm talking about this whole situation. The bikers, the media circus, the lawsuit, it's tearing this town apart. This town was already torn apart. I just made people look at it. And what good has that done to Sean Johnson's family is leaving? Local businesses are suffering because people are afraid to come downtown. We've had 3 fights break out at the high school between kids whose parents are on different sides of this thing. He leaned against the wall. You proved your point, Ela. You stood up, you got the charges. Dropped, you made Brent pay. Can't that be enough? No, Ela said simply. Because next time there's a Deshaun, next time there's a cop who thinks his badge is a license to terrorize what, then? We all just look away, again. We all just say, well, at least we don't have a media circus. So what's your end game here? You take down Brent, take down the department, take down everyone who ever looked at you sideways, then what you think that makes Elkridge a better place. I think Elkridge gets what it deserves. Good or bad, that's up to the people who live here. Tom put his hat back on. You used to be reasonable, Ela. You used to understand compromise. I used to be scared. There's a difference. After he left, Isla found her father in his usual booth, watching her with worried eyes. You're making enemies faster than you're making friends, he said. I know. At some point, you're going to have to ask yourself if winning this fight is worth losing everything else. Everything else is already lost, Daddy. The diner's only full because I'm famous, not because the food's good. Half the people who come here don't even eat, they just take pictures and leave. The other half are hoping to see a fight break out. We're not a restaurant anymore. We're a tourist attraction. So what do you want to be? It was the question Isla had been avoiding for weeks. What did she want? To go back to the way things were when she was invisible and safe, to embrace this new identity as some kind of activist hero, to burn it all down and start over somewhere else. She didn't have an answer. The evening brought another surprise. Around 6, just as the dinner crowd was settling and a convoy of vehicles pulled up outside. Not motorcycles this time, but SUVs, expensive ones. Men in suits got out, followed by camera crews. Who the hell is this? Sam muttered. One of the men walked in and Isla recognized him immediately. Senator James Crawford, whose face had been all over the news for the past year as he campaigned for governor. He was younger than he looked on TV, maybe 50, with the kind of charisma that filled a room. Ms. Brooks, he said, extending a hand, I've been following your story. I wonder if we could talk. They sat in the same booth where Mayor Pritchard had tried to intimidate her, where her father spent his mornings, where countless conversations had happened over the years. Now a senator sat there surrounded by his people, trying to co-opt her story for his campaign. I'll cut to the chase, Crawford said. What happened to you represents everything wrong with small-town politics. Corruption, abuse of power, good people being silenced by bad systems. It's the perfect example of why we need reform at the state level. So you want to use me for your campaign? I want to amplify your message. You've started a conversation that needs to be had statewide. With my platform, we could turn your story into real policy changes. Body cameras for all officers, independent oversight boards, mandatory reporting of excessive force complaints. He leaned forward. You've got people's attention, Ela. Let's do something meaningful with it. And what do you get out of it? Crawford smiled. Votes, obviously. I'm not going to pretend this is purely altruistic. But our interests align here. You want justice? I want reform. Why not work together? Catherine, who'd been listening from the next booth, spoke up. What specifically are you proposing? A partnership. Isla appears at some campaign events, tells her story, endorses my platform. In exchange, I dedicate significant resources to her legal case. Expert witnesses, additional lawyers, media management. And when I'm governor, I make police reform a top legislative priority. When you're governor, Isla repeated. That's a big if. Latest polls have me up by 7 points. It's not a sure thing, but it's looking good. He pulled out a folder. This is a draft agreement. Take your time, read it over, talk to your lawyer. But I need an answer by the end of the week. The primary's in 6 weeks, and if we're going to make this work, we need to start now. After he left, Isla sat staring at the folder like it might explode. What do you think? She asked Catherine. I think it's a deal with the devil, but I also think devils sometimes get things done that angels can't. Catherine opened the folder, started reading. The terms are surprisingly fair. He's not asking for exclusive rights to your story, not prohibiting you from speaking independently. The legal support he's offering is substantial. We're talking about a team that could really make a difference in your case. But politicians are politicians. He's using you. Even if his intentions are good, he's still using you. And when the election's over, whether he wins or loses, you'll still be here dealing with the fallout. Isla took the folder home that night, read it cover to cover 3 times. Her father watched her from his chair, too tired to comment, but his presence was its own kind of counsel. Mama wouldn't have trusted a politician, Isla said finally. Mama didn't trust anybody who wore a tie, but she also knew how to pick her battles. He coughed, the sound wet and painful. You've been fighting alone, baby girl. Maybe it's time to let some reinforcements in, even if they ain't perfect. The next morning, Isla was about to call Crawford when Officer Davis showed up. He wasn't in uniform, wasn't on duty, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. I'm resigning, he said without preamble. Turning in my badge today. Why are you telling me? Because you were right. About Brent, about the department, about all of it. I've been a cop for 15 years, and I've watched good people leave because they couldn't stomach the corruption. I've watched bad cops get promoted because they knew how to play the game. I've looked the other way so many times I can't even count anymore. He sat down heavily. That morning you stood up to Brent, I should have been the one doing that. I knew what he was, knew what he'd been doing, but I kept my head down because it was easier, because I had a pension to think about. So why quit now? Because my daughter asked me something yesterday. She said, Daddy, are you one of the good cops or one of the bad cops? And I couldn't answer her. Not honestly. He looked at Isla with red-rimmed eyes. I can't wear this badge and look her in the eye anymore. So I'm done. What will you do? I don't know. Maybe nothing for a while. Maybe figure out who I am without the uniform. He stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, what you're doing is important. Don't let anybody tell you different. And don't let anybody make you compromise what you know is right, not for politics, not for peace, not for anything. After he left, Isla called Senator Crawford and told him yes. The partnership with Crawford moved fast. Too fast, maybe, but Isla was swept up in it before she could second-guess herself. Within a week, she was standing on a stage in Columbia telling her story to a crowd of 3,000 people. Within 2 weeks, she'd done 6 interviews, appeared on 3 news programs, and become the face of Crawford's police reform platform. The attention was overwhelming. Everywhere Isla went, people recognized her. Some wanted to shake her hand, tell her she was brave, share their own stories of police harassment. Others screamed obscenities, threw things made it clear that half the state thought she was a traitor and a troublemaker. You're doing great, Crawford's campaign manager kept saying. But Isla felt like she was drowning, like she'd lost control of her own story somewhere along the way. The bikers noticed. Sam pulled her aside after one particularly brutal rally where protesters had nearly broken through the security line. You okay? He asked. I don't know what I am anymore. You want out, say the word. We'll get you out. I can't. The case depends on this. Crawford's team is actually making progress. His lawyers found 3 other families willing to testify about Brent's pattern of harassment. We might actually win this thing. Winning a case don't mean much if you lose yourself in the process. But Isla couldn't stop now. The momentum was too strong, the stakes too high. She kept doing interviews, kept telling her story, kept smiling for cameras, while inside she felt herself crumbling. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the primary. Isla was at a campaign event in Greenville when someone in the crowd started shouting. Security moved to remove him, but his words cut through the noise. What about your father? What about Robert Brooks and what he did? Isla froze. What? Your father, Robert Brooks, ask him about 1984, ask him who he really is. Security dragged the man away, but the damage was done. Reporters were already pulling out their phones, searching for information. Crawford's team went into crisis mode, rushing Isla off stage, into a car back to her hotel. What was he talking about? Crawford demanded. What happened in 1984? I don't know, Isla said honestly. My father's never mentioned anything about. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Having fun up there playing politician. The voice was distorted, mechanical. Hope it was worth it. Because tomorrow, everybody's going to know the truth about your family. And then we'll see how many people still think you're a hero. The line went dead. Isla spent the drive back to Elk Ridge in silence, her mind racing. What could they possibly have on her father? He'd lived his whole life in that town, run a diner, raised a family. What secret could be dark enough to matter after 40 years? She got home at 2 in the morning. Her father was awake, sitting in the dark diner waiting for her. Daddy, there's something I need to ask you. Something about 1984. Someone at the rally said, I know what they said. His voice was quiet, defeated. I've been waiting for this. Hoping it wouldn't come up, but knowing eventually it would. What are you talking about? He was silent for a long moment. Then, in 1984, I killed a man. The words hung in the air like smoke. Isla sat down hard, her legs giving out. What? It was self-defense. He broke into the diner high on something, waving a knife. Your mama was pregnant with you. He came at her and His hand shook. I grabbed the shotgun we kept under the counter. Told him to leave, he didn't. He lunged at your mama and I pulled the trigger. Oh my God. Sheriff ruled it self-defense. Clean shoot, they said. But the man I killed, his name was Thomas Hollis, Brent's father. Everything clicked into place. Brent's hatred, his determination to destroy them, the personal venom behind every action. It wasn't just about Isla standing up to him. It was about decades of resentment of a son who blamed her family for his father's death. Does Brent know? He knows. His mama told him. Filled his head with stories about how I murdered his daddy in cold blood, how the sheriff covered it up because we were white and they were... He stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. They were what? They were poor. They were on the wrong side of town. They were the kind of people the sheriff didn't care about protecting. Her father's voice cracked. The shooting was clean, Isla. It was self-defense. But the aftermath, the way the town rallied around us, the way they dismissed the Hollis family's grief, the way they made it clear that some lives mattered more than others. That wasn't clean. That was just the way things worked. Isla felt sick. So Brent spent his whole life thinking you got away with murder. And now he's trying to settle the score through you. Her father looked at her with devastated eyes. I'm sorry, baby girl. I never wanted this to touch you. I thought if I kept quiet, if I just let it stay buried, maybe it would die with me. But hate don't die. It just waits. The next morning, the story broke. Every news outlet ran with it. Diner owner's father killed cop's father in 1984, shooting. The narrative shifted overnight. Suddenly, Isla wasn't a hero standing up to police brutality. She was part of a decades-long feud, her father's victim's son seeking justice against historical wrongs. Crawford's campaign tried to spin it, but the damage was done. Polls showed his numbers dropping. Reporters who'd been sympathetic turned skeptical. The internet, which had celebrated Isla, now tore her apart. You should have told me, she said to her father. Would it have changed anything? She wanted to say yes, wanted to say she would have handled things differently, would have been more careful, would have found a way to stand up for Deshaun without triggering this avalanche of consequences. But deep down, she knew the truth. No, she admitted, I would have done the same thing. I had to. Even knowing it would cost this much. Isla looked around the diner empty again, the customers scared off by the new scandal. The campaign events canceled, the lawsuit suddenly on shaky ground. She'd lost everything she'd built, dragged her father's darkest secret into the light, made herself a target for everyone who'd ever wanted to tear her down. Yeah, she said finally, even knowing. Because that was the thing about standing up. You didn't get to choose the cost. You didn't get to control the fallout. You just decided whether you were the kind of person who looked away or the kind who stepped in, and then you lived with whatever came after. Outside, Sam's motorcycle rumbled to life, joined by others. The bikers were leaving one by one, heading back to their lives. They'd stayed as long as they could, but even loyalty had its limits. Soon it would just be Isla and her father again, alone in their empty diner, waiting to see if the weight of the past would finally crush them both. But not quite yet. As Isla watched the bikes depart, one remained. Sam's. He looked at her through the window, gave a small nod, and shut off his engine. Some people Isla realized stayed. Sam walked back into the diner like he'd never considered leaving. Like the decision to stay had been made a long time ago, and everything else was just formality. He sat at the counter, poured himself coffee from the pot Isla had forgotten was still on, and waited. "You don't have to do this," Isla said. "Do what?" "Stay, watch everything burn, get dragged down with us." Sam took a slow sip. "My old man used to say there's two kinds of people in this world. Ones who run toward the fire and ones who run away from it. I've spent 63 years running toward it. Little late to change now." Rose came through this door 10 minutes later, followed by 6 other bikers who'd supposedly left an hour ago. They'd been circling the block waiting to see if they were really needed. Now they settled into booths like they'd never left, like the scandal hadn't changed a damn thing. "We had a vote," Rose announced. "We're staying, all of us, rotating shifts just like before, because whatever happened 40 years ago don't change what happened last week. You stood up for that boy. That's what matters." Isla felt tears burning her eyes. "My father killed Brent's father." "In self-defense," Rose corrected. "Protecting his pregnant wife from a man high on drugs with a knife. That's what the sheriff ruled. That's what the evidence showed. The fact that Brent turned it into something else, that's on him, not you. The media doesn't see it that way. The media don't see anything except what sells clicks." Sam leaned back. "But here's what I know. I've been alive long enough to watch 100 stories blow up and die down. This one will too. Question is, will you still be standing when the smoke clears?" Her father shuffled out from the back room, moving slower than usual, his face gray with exhaustion and shame. He stopped when he saw the biker's surprise flickering across his features. "You're still here." "Damn right we are," Rose said. "You think we came all this way just to leave when things got complicated? We're bikers, not politicians." "But my past..." "Your past is your past. What you did 40 years ago to protect your family. That's between you and him. What your daughter did last week to protect a kid. That's between her and her conscience. We're here for what matters now, not what happened then." Robert Brooks sank into a chair and Isla watched her father cry for the first time since her mother's funeral. Not quiet tears, but the kind of sobbing that came from a lifetime of carrying weight nobody else could see. "I never meant for any of this to touch her," he choked out. "I tried so hard to keep it buried." "Buried things got a way of digging themselves up," Sam said quietly. "But that don't mean they define you. You did what you had to do. Isla did what she had to do. Ain't neither of you got nothing to apologize for." The next few days were brutal. The scandal dominated every news cycle. Crawford's campaign went into freefall polls, showed him down by 12 points now, and his advisors were quietly suggesting he cut ties with Isla entirely. The lawsuit hit complications as Brent's lawyers filed motions arguing that the entire case was tainted by the historical feud between families. "They're calling it a vendetta," Catherine explained over the phone, her voice tight with frustration. "Claiming that your defense of Deshawn was actually an attack on Brent, motivated by your father's killing of his father. It's absurd, but it's effective. The judge is considering dismissing the case entirely." "So that's it, we lose?" "Not yet. We've still got the security footage, the witness testimony, the pattern of complaints against Hollis. But we need something more, something that cuts through all the noise and makes it impossible to ignore what this case is really about." Isla hung up and stood behind the counter of her empty diner, watching the street outside. Elkridge had turned quiet again, people staying away, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. She'd become toxic, a liability, someone to avoid rather than support. The bell rang. Isla looked up, expecting another reporter or protester. Instead, it was Deshawn Johnson. "You're supposed to be in Charlotte," Isla said. "We didn't go." The boy's voice was stronger than before, steadier. "My dad said we were running. My mom said we were surviving, but I said we were giving up. And I don't want to be someone who gives up." Marcus Johnson came through the door behind his son, looking torn between pride and terror. The boy wouldn't let it go. Wouldn't stop talking about how you stood up when nobody else would. Wouldn't stop asking why we couldn't do the same. "So we're staying," Deshawn said, "and I want to testify in the lawsuit. I want to tell everyone what really happened that morning." "Son, you're 12 years old. You don't have to." Yes, I do. Deshawn looked at Isla with eyes that seemed far older than 12. You stood up for me when you didn't have to, when it cost you everything. The least I can do is stand up for you. Hila knelt down to his level. You understand what that means. The questions they'll ask, the way they'll try to twist your words. I understand that if I don't speak up, then those kids who jumped me were right. That I should have just cooperated. That I should have just let Officer Hollis do whatever he wanted because fighting back only makes things worse. His jaw set in a way that reminded Isla of her mother. But I don't believe that, and I don't think you do either. Catherine filed the paperwork that afternoon. Deshawn Johnson would testify. So would his parents. So would Tyler Chen and his father. So would Officer Davis, now a civilian, who'd agreed to detail the department's pattern of covering up complaints against Hollis. The case was back on. But the real surprise came 3 days later when Isla's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Brooke, this is Linda Hollis, Brent's mother. Isla's hand tightened on the phone. Mrs. Hollis, I need to talk to you, not on the phone, in person, today if possible. They met at a park on the edge of town, neutral territory, away from cameras and crowds. Linda Hollis was in her 70s now, bent with age but still sharp-eyed. She sat on a bench and Isla sat beside her, both women silent for a long moment. Your father killed my husband, Linda finally said. I know. And for 40 years I hated him for it. Hated your whole family. Raised my son to hate you too. Told him stories about how Robert Brooks was a murderer who got away with it because he was on the right side of the color line. She paused. I believe those stories. I made Brent believe them. And now look what it's done to him. Mrs. Hollis, let me finish. The old woman's voice was firm. I've been watching what's happening. Watching my son destroy himself trying to destroy you. Watching him use his badge to settle a grudge that should have died with his father. And I realized something. I did this to him. I fed him poison his whole life, and now he's choking on it. Why are you telling me this? Linda pulled an envelope from her purse. Because I found something. Letters my husband wrote before he died. He was an addict, Ms. Brooks. Cocaine, prescription pills, whatever he could get his hands on. These letters, she handed them to Hila. He was planning to rob your father's diner that night. He'd been planning it for weeks. He knew your mother would be there alone during closing. He knew where the money was kept. Hila opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letters were there, handwritten, rambling, confirming everything Linda had said. Thomas Hollis had been planning an armed robbery. Robert Brooks hadn't killed a random desperate man. He'd killed someone who'd been targeting his family specifically. This changes everything, Isla whispered. I know, and I'm going to testify to it. Going to tell the court that I lied about what happened that night because I was angry and grieving and wanted someone to blame. Going to tell them that I poisoned my son against your family for no good reason. Linda's voice broke. I can't undo what I've done. Can't give Brent back the years he wasted on hate. But maybe I can stop him from wasting the rest of his life. He'll hate you for this. He already hates himself. Maybe this way he can start to forgive both of us. The revelation hit the news like a bomb. Linda Hollis's testimony, combined with her husband's letters, completely reframed the 1984 shooting. The narrative shifted again, this time toward the real story, the complicated truth that couldn't be reduced to heroes and villains. Crawford's numbers started climbing again. The lawsuit gained momentum, and public opinion, fickle as always, began swinging back in Hila's favor. But Isla found she didn't care as much as she thought she would. Somewhere in the chaos of the past weeks, she'd stopped needing the world's approval. She'd found something more valuable, the knowledge that she'd done the right thing regardless of cost. The trial date arrived on a cold morning in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters, supporters, protesters, curious onlookers. Isla sat at the plaintiff's table with Catherine, her father, beside her, and watched as the jury filed in. Deshawn testified first. He was nervous, stumbling over words, but his story was clear and consistent. He told them about walking to school, about Brent grabbing him, about the fear that had paralyzed him until Isla stepped in. Did Ms. Brooks assault Officer Hollis? Catherine asked. No, ma'am. She just touched his arm. She was trying to make him let go of me. And what happened after she intervened? Officer Hollis let me go. I got my stuff and ran to school. I was scared, but I was okay. Because of her. Brent's lawyer cross-examined aggressively, but Deshawn held steady. Then came Marcus and his wife, Tyler Chen, and his father, Officer Davis, with his documentation of covered-up complaints. Each testimony built on the last, creating a picture of systemic abuse that couldn't be denied. Linda Hollis testified on the fourth day. She was calm, precise, unflinching, as she detailed her own role in perpetuating the cycle of hatred. She read her husband's letters aloud, her voice never wavering, even as Brent sat in the gallery behind the defense table, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. "I loved my husband," Linda said, "but he was sick. And instead of getting him help, instead of facing the truth about his addiction and his plans, I made him a martyr. I made my son believe that violence done to us was worse than violence we'd planned to do to others. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." When she stepped down, Brent stormed out of the courtroom. Isla watched him go and felt something unexpected pity. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the four women stood and read the verdict. In the matter of Brooks versus Hollis and the Elk Ridge Police Department, we find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Isla sat frozen, unable to process what she'd just heard. They'd won. After everything, after all the cost and chaos and pain, they'd actually won. The damages were substantial enough to cover Isla's legal fees and lost business enough to fund scholarships for kids like Deshawn, enough to force the police department to implement real reforms. But more than the money, more than the victory itself, was what the verdict represented. Accountability, change, the possibility that standing up could actually matter. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed Isla with questions. She pushed through them, looking for her father, and found him standing with Sam and Rose and the other bikers who'd stayed. "We did it, Daddy." "No, baby girl, you did it. We just held the ladder while you climbed." Crawford won his primary 3 weeks later, riding the wave of publicity from the trial. He invited Isla to his victory party, but she declined. She'd done her part, told her story, stood up when it mattered. The rest was his responsibility, not hers. The diner reopened with a new name, Brooks and Deshawn's. Marcus Johnson became her business partner, investing some of the GoFundMe money to expand the menu and modernize the kitchen. Deshawn worked weekends learning the business, dreaming about the future. Elk Ridge changed slowly, grudgingly, the way small towns always did. Some people never forgave Isla. Some would carry their resentment to their graves. But others, the ones who mattered, started to see differently, started to question authority instead of blindly following it, started to speak up when they saw injustice instead of looking away. The bikers left eventually, one by one, heading back to their lives with promises to visit. Sam and Rose stayed the longest, lingering through Christmas, making sure the diner was really stable before they finally rolled out one sunny January morning. "You'll be okay," Sam said, hugging Isla goodbye. "I know. You changed this town, whether they admit it or not. Maybe, or maybe I just cracked it open enough to let some light in." Rose handed her something before she left, a leather vest worn soft with age, the Hells Angels patch prominent on the back. Below it, someone had stitched new words: honorary member Isla Brooks, defender of the innocent. "You earned this," Rose said, "not because you're a biker, but because you're one of us, someone who stands up, someone who doesn't back down, someone who knows that sometimes the right thing is the hardest thing and does it anyway." Isla wore the vest that day and every day after serving coffee to customers who'd learned to see beyond labels, beyond patches, beyond the easy assumptions that had once defined her town. She wore it when Deshawn graduated high school, when her father finally passed peacefully in his sleep, when the mayor who tried to run her out of town was voted out in a historic election. She wore it as a reminder that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was touching a cop's wrist when everything in you screamed to stay silent. It was standing between power and the powerless when the cost was everything you'd built. It was looking at a scared 12-year-old boy and deciding that his life mattered more than your comfort. Years later, when other people came to her diner with their own stories of standing up and paying the price, Isla would sit with them over coffee and tell them the truth. That it didn't get easier, that the con didn't get smaller, that sometimes doing the right thing meant losing everything and gaining only the knowledge that you'd done what needed doing. But she'd also tell them about the morning 300 motorcycles rolled into Elk Ridge, about strangers who became family, about a community that learned to see differently because one woman refused to look away. She'd tell them that standing up was contagious, that courage spread like wildfire, That one voice could become a chorus if it sang loud enough and true enough and long enough. And then she'd pour to them another cup of coffee, straighten her Hell's Angels vest, and remind them of the most important truth she'd learned, that the world didn't change. Because people were fearless, but because some people loved something more than they feared the consequences of defending it. That was the lesson Isla Brooks learned when she put her hand on Officer Brent Hollis's wrist and said the words that would define the rest of her life. Don't you dare touch him. It wasn't the beginning of something, it was the continuation of a fight that had been going on long before she was born and would continue long after she was gone. But for one moment in one small town, in one dying diner, she'd held the line. And that was enough.